Have you ever felt completely recharged after spending time alone, only to wonder why everyone else seems to need constant noise and company? That assumption creates pressure to perform sociability, to overextend, to constantly prove you're normal. And have you ever questioned whether that says something is wrong with you? That doubt doesn't come from psychology. It comes from social pressure. We live in a culture that equates sociability with health and silence with dysfunction. So when someone genuinely enjoys solitude, they're often misread as distant, arrogant, or emotionally unavailable. The real consequence of that misunderstanding is burnout. People who thrive in solitude start overriding their natural rhythm just to appear normal. Choosing to be alone is not the same as being incapable of connection. In many cases, it reflects emotional regulation, cognitive depth, and a strong sense of autonomy. In this video, we're going deeper than surface-level labels. We're unpacking the psychological traits of people who genuinely like to be alone, why solitude sharpens mental clarity, the real difference between loneliness and chosen isolation, how introverts and deep thinkers process the world, why intelligence often correlates with comfort in solitude, and the quiet mental strength behind enjoying your own company. Let's start by separating solitude from loneliness. Loneliness is distress. It's the pain of disconnection. Solitude, on the other hand, is chosen space. The emotional experience is completely different. When someone feels lonely, their nervous system signals threat. When someone chooses to be alone, their nervous system often signals relief. I've worked with individuals who feared being alone because silence amplified their anxiety. I've also worked with individuals who feared constant socializing because it overstimulated them. The difference isn't the number of people around them. It's how their brain processes stimulation and connection. Psychologist Hans Eysenck proposed that introverts naturally operate with higher baseline cortical arousal. In practical terms, their brains are already more stimulated. External input such as noise, conversation, and social demands pushes them toward overload faster than it would an extrovert. So, for introverts, solitude becomes regulation, not withdrawal. This is one of the first psychological traits of people who like to be alone. They manage stimulation intentionally. They understand, even if intuitively, that their mental clarity depends on quiet. And honestly, that clarity matters more than most people realize. When you remove constant input, your mind organizes itself. Thoughts that were scattered begin to connect. Emotions that were muted by distraction become visible. This is why solitude often improves emotional health. It creates space for processing. People who prefer being alone often report that they make better decisions after time in isolation. That isn't mystical, it's neurological. The brain's default mode network, the system involved in self-reflection and internal narrative, becomes more active in quiet states. That activation strengthens insight. This leads to another trait, deep internal processing. Introverts and deep thinkers don't experience the world in a shallow, reactive way. They absorb it. They replay conversations. They analyze tone shifts. They connect present events to past patterns. This isn't overthinking by default. It's pattern recognition. Because they process internally, they don't need constant verbal expression. In a group, they may speak less. But when they do speak, it's often precise. Their thoughts have been filtered, examined, and refined before being shared. That internal orientation also explains why, many highly intelligent individuals prefer solitude. Intelligence isn't just IQ scores, it's really about cognitive complexity. The more complex someone's thinking patterns are, the more mental space they require. High-level abstract reasoning, it demands uninterrupted focus. Constant social engagement just fragments attention. There's research showing that individuals with higher cognitive ability often report lower social dependency for life satisfaction. But that doesn't mean they lack empathy or connection. It just means their stimulation needs differ. Intellectual engagement can be just as rewarding to them as social interaction is to others. In everyday life, this looks like someone choosing to spend a Saturday reading, building something, researching an idea, or planning long-term goals instead of attending another social gathering. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. Another interesting trait of people who enjoy solitude is selective connection. They don't reject relationships. They reject superficiality. Small talk drains them not because they lack social skill, but because it feels inefficient. They crave depth conversations about values, fears, meaning, and growth. This can create misunderstandings. In a culture that equates frequency of contact with affection, their low-volume communication style can be misread as indifference. In reality, they measure closeness by emotional honesty, not daily updates. If you're someone who likes being alone, you probably don't need 10 friends. You need 2 people you can speak truthfully with. That's enough. There's also a strong element of autonomy in solitude-oriented personalities. Psychologists Edward D.C. and Richard Ryan, through self-determination theory, identified autonomy as a core psychological need. People who prefer solitude often have a heightened sensitivity to autonomy. They function best when self-directed. Micromanagement exhausts them. Overly controlling relationships, well, they really do suffocate them. They don't resist structure out of rebellion. They resist it because independent thinking is just central to their identity. And honestly, that independence builds mental strength. It takes psychological resilience to actually enjoy your own company. When you're alone, there's just no distraction from your insecurities, no one to immediately validate you, no audience to perform for. People who consistently choose solitude, they develop self-reliance. They learn to self-soothe. They learn to motivate themselves. They learn to evaluate their own decisions without, constant external reassurance. This internal validation system is, honestly, pretty powerful. It reduces susceptibility to peer pressure. It reduces the need for social comparison. It definitely strengthens emotional regulation. However, this doesn't make them immune to loneliness. That's another myth worth challenging. Even those who love being alone need connection. The difference is that their loneliness doesn't come from lack of social contact. It comes from lack of meaningful resonance. They can attend events, talk to people, and still feel disconnected if the interaction lacks depth. Understanding this distinction is crucial for mental health awareness. If you enjoy solitude but occasionally feel lonely, it doesn't mean you're wired incorrectly. It means your need for authentic connection isn't being met. The solution isn't forcing yourself into more environments that drain you. It's seeking spaces that align with your depth, like smaller gatherings, thoughtful communities, meaningful conversations. There's another subtle trait worth mentioning: observational awareness. People who like to be alone often spend more time watching than broadcasting. They notice shifts in body language. They pick up inconsistencies in tone. They sense tension before it's spoken. Because they're not competing for airtime, their cognitive bandwidth is free for analysis. This can make them emotionally intelligent, even if they're not outwardly expressive. And, emotional intelligence doesn't always look charismatic. Sometimes it looks quiet and perceptive. Now, let's address the uncomfortable question. When does liking solitude become unhealthy? It becomes unhealthy when it's driven by fear, when avoidance replaces choice, when isolation becomes a shield against vulnerability rather than a tool for clarity. The key difference is emotional state. After healthy solitude, you feel restored. After avoidance-based isolation, you feel smaller. If you're unsure which one you're practicing, pay attention to how you feel after spending time alone. Calm and focused, or anxious and withdrawn? Your nervous system will tell you the truth. People who genuinely enjoy being alone aren't broken, antisocial, or emotionally stunted. They often possess strong self-awareness, deep processing ability, selective relational standards, intellectual independence, and emotional resilience. In a world that constantly pushes noise and performance, choosing solitude can be an act of psychological strength. This video is for anyone interested in psychology, personality types, introversion, self-development, human behavior, mental health awareness, and emotional intelligence. Not to romanticize isolation, but to understand it accurately. If this helped you better understand yourself or someone who's often misunderstood for needing space, then you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe to It's All Psychological if you value nuanced conversations about the mind rather than cliches. Share this video with someone who thinks liking solitude is a flaw. The more we understand the psychology behind human behavior, the less we judge it and the more intentionally we live.